The lunchtime rush had thinned, leaving the little cafe on 47th Street in a soft lull between chatter and clinking spoons. The place smelled of roasted beans and warm butter, comfort for the city's hurried souls. Lila moved through the narrow aisle with her usual rhythm, tray balanced effortlessly, the faintest smile curving her lips. She was 26, studying languages at night, and surviving on tips and optimism by day. The cafe was her second home, though it sometimes felt like a stage where she played the same role over and over, the friendly waitress with good memory. She was refilling a couple's coffee when the bell above the door chimed. A man in a long gray coat entered, tall but slightly stooped, with silver hair and the tired dignity of someone misplaced in time. He looked around, hesitant. Lila caught the flicker of confusion in his eyes and approached with a practiced smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Table for one." He blinked, then answered in a stream of soft French. "Je voudrais juste un café et un croissant, s'il vous plaît." His tone was polite but uncertain, as if he was already apologizing for being misunderstood. Lila froze for a heartbeat, her ears catching the familiar cadence. No one else in the cafe spoke French. She knew because she'd tried to teach her coworkers a few phrases last month, to no avail. But now, something inside her stirred, like a forgotten melody. "Bien sûr, monsieur," she replied without thinking. "Un café et un croissant tout de suite." The man's face lit up in relief. "Ah, vous parlez français. C'est merveilleux." A few heads turned. The manager glanced over from the counter, curious. It wasn't every day someone heard French in their small midtown cafe. Lila just smiled, scribbled his order, and walked away with renewed energy. She didn't notice the man at the corner table, a solitary figure in a dark navy suit, reading the Financial Times, lower his newspaper slightly, his eyes following her with quiet interest. Ethan Cross, billionaire investor and habitual observer of human nature, had come for solitude, not spectacle. But there was something about that brief exchange, the fluency, the gentleness in her tone, the way she leaned slightly toward the old man, not out of habit but respect, that held him. Lila returned with the order a few minutes later, setting the coffee and croissant on the table with careful grace. She lingered just long enough to ask, "Et comment trouvez-vous New York jusqu'à présent, monsieur?" The man smiled wistfully. "C'est brilliant, mais charmant. Les gens, ils vont vite, mais ils ont bon cœur, je crois." Lila nodded. "Oui, parfois il faut juste ralentir un peu pour le voir." They shared a quiet laugh. She noticed his hands trembled slightly as he reached for the cup. Instinctively, she steadied it for him, her touch gentle but sure. The gesture was small, but it drew the attention of the man with the newspaper again. From his corner, Ethan studied the scene. The young woman who didn't rush, the old man who smiled again, the brief suspension of city noise between them. He'd seen people buy kindness, fake it, manipulate it, but rarely had he seen it offered so freely. When Lila walked past his table later, he caught her saying, "Thank you," in 3 languages to different customers, each with an accent that made her words sound like music. Ethan found himself smiling, a rarity these days. He folded his newspaper neatly, his mind already spinning an idea that felt strange even to him, a mixture of impulse and purpose. The rest of Lila's shift passed in a blur of orders, plates, and the usual chorus of, "Check please." But every so often, she noticed the man in the navy suit still there, still quiet, a faint smile hidden behind his cup. When she finally turned to clear his table, she realized he was gone, leaving only a neatly folded napkin, a tip far too generous for a single coffee, and something that looked like a note tucked beneath it. She reached for it absently, wiping crumbs from the surface, unaware that the smallest act of kindness she'd shown that day had just shifted the course of her life. Lila didn't notice the note at first. She was too busy wiping tables and stacking plates in the kitchen, her apron streaked with coffee stains and pastry crumbs. It was nearly closing time. The soft hum of the espresso machine was the only sound left in the cafe. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving her and Marco, the manager, to finish the final cleanup. The napkin had been tucked discreetly under the rim of a saucer, next to an untouched glass of water. When she lifted it, she saw the crisp edge of a cream-colored envelope, expensive paper, the kind that didn't belong in this place. For a moment, She assumed it was just another forgotten receipt or maybe a complaint, but curiosity tugged at her. The handwriting on the front was elegant, inked in dark blue, spelling her name in a way that made her breath catch. Lila. She turned the envelope over in her hands, feeling its weight. Inside, something thin and stiff shifted, paper, maybe 2 sheets. She hesitated. Customers left thank you notes sometimes, but nothing like this. The cafe was empty except for the distant rumble of the city outside, the flicker of a streetlight dancing on the window. She untucked the flap and slid the contents free. A note, written on thick stationery, and a folded piece of glossy paper. The note was short, written in the same deliberate script. Greater than, kindness is a rare language. Meet me if you wish to change your life, EC. Below that, a time and address, LaGuardia Private Terminal, 8 a.m. Her heart gave a startled thump. She stared at the initials. EC. The man in the navy suit, the quiet one who'd been reading the paper, she remembered his steady gaze, the faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. For a strange reason, she could still feel his attention, calm and observing, as if he'd seen through her small act with the Frenchman earlier. The second sheet unfolded into a rectangular slip. No, not paper. A ticket. A first-class ticket to Geneva. Lila nearly dropped it. Her mind couldn't make sense of it. She flipped it over, searching for a mistake, a clue, anything. It was real. Her name printed clearly across the top, Lila Moreau. She laughed softly, a shaky, disbelieving sound. Someone was playing a prank. It had to be. Marco poked his head out from the back, drying his hands on a towel. You okay out here, Lila? Yeah, she said quickly, slipping the note back into the envelope. Just, finishing up. He gave her a look. You sure? You're pale. Long day, she murmured. When he disappeared again, she sank into the nearest chair, the envelope trembling in her fingers. Geneva, a billionaire with her name on a plane ticket. The thought was ridiculous. It had the flavor of one of those urban fairy tales you read online. Waitress discovers golden opportunity, that kind of nonsense. But the ticket was real. She could feel the glossy paper, the embossed airline seal. The flight number, the date, tomorrow morning. Lila thought of her apartment, the rent overdue, the pile of unopened bills, the French textbooks stacked beside her bed. Her life had been a loop of small kindnesses that never seemed to echo back. And yet here was something impossible, something she didn't dare believe could be for her. She looked again at the line in the note, meet me if you wish to change your life. It was absurd, dangerous, even. Who leaves a plane ticket for a stranger? She thought of every warning she'd ever been told. Don't trust strange men, don't walk alone at night, don't follow mysterious invitations. And yet, under all that caution, a spark flared, something restless, hungry. She folded the note and ticket carefully, slipping them into her bag as if they might evaporate if left too long in the open air. Her shift ended 20 minutes later. She walked home through the cool October night, replaying the scene in her head. The Frenchman's relieved smile, the quiet man's watchful eyes, the way the cafe light had caught the gold edge of the envelope. By the time she reached her small apartment, her thoughts were a storm. She set the note on her kitchen counter and stared at it while making tea she didn't drink. Midnight came, then 1, then 2. Every time she told herself she wouldn't go, a whisper in the back of her mind said she'd regret it forever if she didn't. Finally, at 3 in the morning, she made her decision. She packed a small bag, passport, a change of clothes, her old French-English dictionary, and placed the ticket carefully inside. When she turned off the light, her heart was hammering, not from fear but from something dangerously close to hope. The morning air at LaGuardia Private Terminal carried the quiet chill of autumn, the kind that made everything feel sharper, more awake. Lila stood outside the glass doors with her small suitcase, gripping the handle as if it might anchor her to the ground. She'd barely slept. Every rational thought had screamed that this was madness, that no sane person follows a note from a stranger to an airport. And yet, she was there. Her breath fogged the glass as she looked in. The terminal was nothing like the crowded airports she knew. It was calm, elegant, cream marble floors, dark wood counters, a few attendants moving with the unhurried grace of people who dealt only with the wealthy. A woman in a navy uniform approached her with a polite smile. Miss Moreau. Lila blinked. Yes. The woman nodded. Mr. Cross is expecting you. This way, please. Mr. Cross. The initials, EC. The pieces clicked into place as the woman led her through a side corridor toward the tarmac. Her stomach twisted. She could still turn back. But when they stepped outside, the sight waiting for her stole her breath. A sleek silver jet gleaming under the morning sun, engines whispering like a secret. A man stood at the foot of the stairs, dressed in a tailored coat, hands tucked casually in his pockets. She recognized him immediately, the quiet man from the café, the one with the newspaper and unreadable eyes. Miss Moreau, he said, his voice steady, smooth, unmistakably confident. You came. Lila hesitated a few steps away, clutching her bag. You left me a plane ticket. I wasn't sure if it was real. He smiled faintly. Most people wouldn't have believed it. You did. I didn't say I believed it, she countered, her tone careful. I said I was curious. He nodded approvingly. Curiosity is the start of every worthwhile story. He gestured toward the plane. May I explain once we're on board? It's warmer inside. Her instincts buzzed between caution and intrigue, but there was something in his calm certainty that disarmed her. She followed him up the steps. Inside, the jet was more like a floating penthouse. Soft lighting, cream leather seats, polished walnut trim. The air smelled faintly of citrus and new beginnings. He motioned for her to sit across from him. I'm Ethan Cross, he said simply. I saw you at the café yesterday. I remember, Lila said. You were watching. I was observing, he corrected gently. You spoke to that French gentleman as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But it wasn't the language that caught my attention, it was how you spoke. You didn't just translate words, you connected. Lila frowned. You bought me a plane ticket because I was nice to someone. A small smile touched his lips. Not exactly. I run a global foundation. Education, culture, language exchange. We fund programs that bridge communication between people who have none. I've been searching for someone to help lead a new initiative in Europe. Someone who understands empathy as much as fluency. And then you walked into that moment. Her mind reeled. You can't just offer that to a stranger. You don't even know me. I know more than you think, he replied quietly. I know you work 2 jobs, that you study languages at night, that you send part of your tips to your sister in Montreal. I had my team look into you, respectfully. I don't make blind invitations. She stared at him, torn between disbelief and awe. That's invasive. It was necessary, he said without apology. You have potential, Miss Moreau. But you've been surviving, not living. I'm offering you a chance to step into something greater. Geneva is where it begins. 1 month. If it isn't what you want, you can walk away. The engines began to hum, and through the window she could see the runway stretching ahead like a path into the unknown. Lila looked down at her hands. This was insane, but the sincerity in his tone was disarming. He wasn't selling her a dream, he was inviting her to prove herself worthy of it. What if I fail? She asked softly. Then you fail forward, Ethan said. But I don't think you will. The plane began to taxi. She should have been terrified, but instead a calm settled over her. As the wheels left the ground, she watched the city shrink below her, a patchwork of gray and gold. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted, a fragile sense that maybe, just maybe, her life had finally begun to change. Geneva was bathed in soft morning light when the jet descended through the clouds. The city spread out like a watercolor, lakes and mountains and clean streets lined with autumn gold. Lila sat by the window, her reflection half merged with the horizon, still uncertain if she was awake or lost in a dream that had gone on too long. Ethan had been quiet most of the flight, absorbed in his tablet, but now he looked over with a small smile. Welcome to your new beginning, he said. The words sounded almost theatrical, but his tone carried no arrogance, just quiet conviction. As they stepped off the jet, a car was waiting, sleek and black, driven by a woman who greeted Ethan with a nod and Lila with a kind smile. They drove along the lake, the world outside calm and impossibly precise. Geneva looked nothing like New York's chaos, it felt measured, as if time itself walked slower here. Ethan guided her through the glass doors of a modern building overlooking the water. Inside, sunlight spilled across clean white floors and the gentle murmur of many languages filled the air. People of every age moved between offices and small conference spaces, their voices overlapping in English, French, Arabic, and languages she couldn't name. "This is one of our hubs," Ethan explained. "The Cross Foundation. We fund translation programs, community schools, refugee education. But I want more than funding, I want connection. And that's where you come in." Lila turned slowly, taking it all in. "I still don't understand why me." Ethan paused, then gestured for her to follow him into a glass-walled meeting room. "When I was younger," he said, "I lived in France. My family moved for business, and I didn't speak a word of the language. I felt invisible. One person, a waitress in Lyon, took the time to teach me a few words every day. It changed everything. I never forgot that." He looked at her, his expression softening. "Yesterday, when you spoke to that old man, you reminded me of her. Not just your French, the way you made him feel seen. The world needs more of that." Lila's throat tightened. She had spent years waiting tables, feeling like she existed only in the background of other people's lives. Now, suddenly, she was being told that her smallest gesture had rippled into something extraordinary. Ethan slid a folder across the table. "This is a proposal, a pilot project. Voices Without Borders. We want to connect young people from different countries through language mentorships. I want you to oversee it. You'll have guidance, of course, but I want the heart of it to be yours." She opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were documents, maps, budgets, real, tangible proof that this wasn't fantasy. Her name was printed on the top page: Program Coordinator, Lila Moreau. "I don't have the experience," she said, almost whispering. "You have the essence," Ethan replied. "The rest can be learned." For a long time, she didn't speak. The sunlight through the glass hit her face, warm and golden, and she realized she hadn't felt hope like this in years. Over the next weeks, Geneva became her classroom and her home. She met teachers, translators, and students from all over the world. She sat in planning sessions, stumbled through presentations, laughed over mispronounced words, and cried once, quietly, alone, when she realized she finally belonged somewhere. Ethan stayed nearby but never intrusive, offering advice when needed and distance when she needed to stand on her own. One crisp morning, months later, Lila found herself sitting in a small café overlooking the lake. Her French was effortless now, her confidence steady. Across from her, a young waitress nervously balanced a tray, apologizing to a tourist in halting English. Lila smiled, recognizing herself in that flustered kindness. When she paid for her coffee, she slipped a folded note beneath the saucer and left without waiting to be seen. The waitress returned, frowning, then unfolding the paper. Inside, in graceful handwriting, it said, "Kindness is a rare language. Never stop speaking it." Outside, Lila walked along the water as the city bells began to chime. She breathed deeply, her heart light. The note was more than a message. It was a circle closing, a story beginning again in someone else's hands.